Hello Outriders, and welcome back to another Outriders video. Today I have been very lucky being an Outriders ambassador to be able to attend a small Q&A session with some other ambassadors, with people from People Can Fly and Square Enix. It was hosted by Nelstar15, who is the creator relations manager at Square Enix. And from People Can Fly, we had the lead game designer and creative director in attendance. I'm going to split this video up into two different sections. The first one being the general overview that they gave us at the beginning of how well they think the game is going and what's likely to change before full release. And the second one's going to be all the questions that were asked by the ambassadors. You'll find links for this though down below in the description if you want to skip at any point. Just before we get started, I would appreciate if you hit that sub button if you're new and you like Outriders content, and give me a thumbs up. It really would help me out with these Outriders videos. Come and check me out over on Twitch, twitch.tv/DJTICKLE. I could be streaming there live right now, probably on that legendary grind. There's a lot of information to get through, so let's get started. I was furiously writing down notes all the way through, so I'm going to go through my notes as it was presented to us in the call. So the order might seem a little bit out of place, but this is exactly the order that we got it. They started off with a general overview of how happy they were that 2 million people had downloaded the demo, and they thought that it had been received very, very well. They didn't have any expectations of how well they wanted the demo to do, but it obviously exceeded their expectations because there wasn't enough capacity for the amount of people that were downloading and jumping on at the beginning. I think a few of us noticed that when they had to pop out the tweet to say actually we're going to spin up some more servers so that everybody can get online. They were super happy with all of the feedback that they had received, and that's whether it be positive or negative. And if there was any negative feedback that they did receive, they're already hard at work trying to rectify all of them issues for when the final game launches. They had a lot of positive comparisons to Gears of War, and obviously that comes from the fact that they worked on Gears of War 1 for PC and their very own game, Gears of War Judgment. They went on to mention that they had good reports back from the story and that plenty of people were intrigued on seeing where the story was going to go. They then give us a little bit of overview of the history of the development of the game. They said the healing mechanic wasn't always in the game, and that was added after they decided that they needed to add classes to the game. But originally, even before that, the game had no classes. They found that it became all a little bit too much, having all the available skill points, abilities, wrapped up into trying to split that into one character. So then they decided to split it down into 4 different classes. Because when it was just one class, with everything available, they felt like the Outrider didn't have an identity, and you wasn't able to tailor that Outrider to a given path. They then moved on to talk about how people are farming in the demo. And they were asked if they were angry with how easy bosses had become farmable in the demo. They said they weren't too worried about it because they weren't worried that the current meta was actually going to be the full meta when we get the full game for farming. They said what we're doing now isn't going to be possible in the full game because at the moment our level is restricted to level 7. And therefore we would go up in level, up in level, up in level, and what we're farming at that world tier, the gear wouldn't be any good anymore. But they were surprised on how popular the Captain and the Gauze farming has been. They really didn't think that people would put so many hours into a demo repeatedly killing these bosses. They were then asked about the current meta in the demo and the favourite class, the Devastator. And they said they didn't really want to talk about metas right now. They're busy collecting data from all of the hours played in the game, and they're checking furiously to make sure nothing is broken and everything is working as intended. But that also could mean that some things are weakened a little bit and maybe nerfed, and then some things are also buffed. They said that the demo is just the start, and they believe that all the metas and all the farming methods will be different in the full game. They mentioned that they'd had a lot of messages about the auto shotgun and how powerful it was, along with how small the magazine size is. But they said that is intended, that it has such a small magazine because of how powerful it actually is. They then went on again to talk a little bit about game meta, and they said in the full game, if the meta is everybody doing the same thing and the same style and the same loadout, they'll purposely adjust it so that there can be multiple metas in the game. They want people really to feel like they can express themselves and gear up how they want, and multiple metas to be available, so that everyone will play the game differently. They then moved on to talk about the Pyromancer, and they said that they've received a lot of feedback saying that damage wise it's lagging behind the other classes. But what they said was that was due to the demo restrictions and the abilities that the Pyro currently has available. They said once we get to the full game, it is way more powerful and it is definitely up there with the best. They then took a moment to talk about cheaters and hackers that are currently doing really bad things in the demo. They obviously didn't want to give us too much information on this, because obviously they don't want to give away anything that they're going to do so that can already be countered. But they said they're looking at it on a daily basis on how best to deal with it. They want to make sure that they get this right, because they don't want to punish anybody accidentally or anybody that is actually innocent. But they said it's great that it's been done in the demo, because it really does give them a heads up that what it would have been if it was just a full game that got released. Due to the game not fully working server side, and it works between the client side and the server side, this is why people are currently able to cheat. But they said once your PC or console connects to the servers, they then know that you have cheated. They've yet to dish out any punishments, and they said that is going to be unlikely in the demo. But you can bet it's going to happen when the full game goes live. Essentially, they don't want cheaters to be able to play with people who are legitimate and spoil their game experience, and that is their number one topic with this. They don't want anybody's legitimate experience being spoilt by cheaters, and they're going to do absolutely everything they can to stop this from happening. We then got to move on to questions that have been submitted by ambassadors. The first one was, is there going to be a blood/gore toggle? And they said not for now, they feel like that wouldn't fit in the game and that all of the blood and the gore is definitely required. Next up were the questions that I'd submitted. And the first one was, is there going to be a way to lock equipment that is your favourite and you definitely don't want to dismantle or sell? They said there currently isn't going to be a way of doing this, but it's something they're taking very much care with right now in the development cycle. They said there's multiple issues right now with selling equipment, deconstructing equipment, and they can see how it's very, very easy to make mistakes. So favoriting gear or something along the lines of that that is going to protect your equipment is definitely coming, but they want to make it so that it's easy. Next, the question I asked was, are they going to look at FPS values during the game itself when running at high settings, during cutscenes, and during transitions? They said that's very high on the priority list right now. There's not going to be anything done in the demo, but they hope to have that sorted out and fixed for when the full game releases. I then went on to ask a question about the Migraine, the legendary SMG, as one of its mods has an anomaly bomb when you kill an enemy, and it never seems to trigger. They said they already knew about that. It is actually not working as intended. Mod 1 is actually conflicting with Mod 2. And because when you kill an enemy, it's just classing that Mod 1 is triggering. Mod 2 is actually never triggering, or very, very rarely does trigger. But they said they already know about it, and when it comes to the main game that will be fixed, and one of them mods is actually going to be replaced. If you've already got the gun though, nothing to worry about. You'll just log in to the new game when released and you'll have the changes and you will get to retain the gun. One of my main worries was that seeing so many legendaries in the demo at such a low level, have we really got bigger and better guns to come? Have we got more weapons to look forward to? And they said there is lots of new weapons still to look forward to. The legendary sample is only a very small sample that we have in the demo. And they've also got legendary armor to look forward to in the main game. Then we've got crafting and the ability to modify legendary weapons. So they've got lots and lots of things for us to come, and we should not worry that we've seen too big of a sample size in the demo. But they did say that legendaries plus crafting is possibly the most awesome thing in the game. I then asked about stash size. Now, mods aren't shared between your 6 character slots. We've had that confirmed previously. But your stash space is shared between all 6 of your characters. They weren't sure on how big the stash had been confirmed for, and all they could tell us right now was it's either going to be 50 or 100. Being the looter shooter hoarder that I am, I'm really hoping that that's going to be 100. At the moment, there's kind of an auto deconstruct that happens, so if your inventory is full and your stash is full, if you collect any armor, you'll notice in the bottom corner of your screen that the armor gets auto deconstructed. They weren't sure if that was going to make it into the full game, and they said it's still on the table as a decision, and they weren't sure which way that was going to go. I asked about various farming methods, and if really the captain farming method is going to be what we're going to have to look forward to for farming when we get to endgame, or expeditions really just going to be a one-time thing and we're going to go back to farming captains and bosses for the best gear. They said they didn't expect the captain farm to be so effective, and they were pretty surprised of how effective, when people had got their hands on the demo, it actually was. But they said no, they said the best gear will come from the expeditions and the hardest content in the game. Off the back of that question, they actually went on to a little bit of a side talk and said they want replayability of the end game content to be extremely high. They want to give people good replayability and good reasons to keep replaying the hardest content, but they want it to be fun and rewarding. They said they want that to stretch through the entire of the game, that people feel like no matter what content they're playing and what they're trying to earn in the game, that it's always fun and rewarding. And I think that was a little hint that they really didn't want the captain to be farmable over and over again and that be the best way to get the best loot in the game. They want it to be much more fun and much more enjoyable. And that was the end of my questions. We then moved on to other questions from other ambassadors. Somebody asked about the story with Seth, and are we going to get any further details about that before the game launches? And they just went, shh, no spoilers, we're not going to talk about that.
What the hell is going on out there?
Next, somebody asked, are we going to get something like Destiny Item Manager for Outriders? They said, unfortunately, there's no API right now, but if the community wants it and the game launches well, it's certainly something that they will look at adding. Somebody else then asked if there's going to be transmog available, and they said there's going to be no transmog at launch. Another question was, is April the 1st really the release date? And they said, as far as it looks right now, it is 100% certain that the game will launch on April the 1st. Somebody else then already asked a question that we kind of already had answered before, and said, were you really expecting 2 million players to try the demo out? And they just said that they knew it was going to be popular because there's a bit of a gap in the market right now for certain kinds of games, but they were very happy with the 2 million downloads and plays, but they certainly didn't expect it to be that popular. Somebody then asked about how do you know what items are new in your inventory, and they just said that the yellow triangle that you get in the corner indicates that the item is new in your inventory. Somebody else then asked about the lore of the game and was wondering if we're going to go back to any of the storyline with the original Outriders. They just kind of went over the story that we saw in the prologue at this point, saying that the original Outriders were a set of super soldiers that were trained to combat the most difficult of situations when arriving on new planets. But after all the accidents and everything that went on, they were more left like a rat pack of people that just wanted to survive. And that was really going to be it for the story of the original Outriders. We then got another question about how hard content was going to be. And how hard expeditions really are solo. The devs said the expeditions are definitely going to be the hardest content in the game. And if you play them solo, you are going to have a harder challenge than in a group. We then went back to stash. The stash is definitely shared between all 6 of your characters, and it's going to be a 50 to 100 slot stash. That's not 50 to 100 slots per character, it's 50 to 100 slots shared between all 6 characters. They've had some bugs with people losing items in the demo, and they did say they would very much like to be able to restore these items for people, and they were looking at it, but unfortunately they might be gone forever. That has been patched and it shouldn't be happening anymore, but they did say they will do their very best to get them items restored if they can. We then got another question about endgame and said after the expeditions, are we going to need another endgame to grind? Something like a horde mode or something with infinite replayability. They said all the endgame content is going to be in the game at launch, and that is the expedition. They said they're replayable, they're fun, and they give the best rewards in the game. They said who knows what is going to come next, but if the community want it and people continue to play the game, they will provide more endgame content for us to play. They said world tier 15 is the highest world tier, and during the very last expedition, that is the hardest the game is going to get. World tier 15 with the highest expedition. But again, they hinted that they will create more content if people want it and people continue to play the game. Somebody then asked, is there any other stories in the game apart from the one about your character? And they said, actually, it's not just about your character. It's about you and your group that will all be in your truck travelling around. So the story is about this group. And that seemed to stand out when the person said that. They said the story is about this group. And at that point then they said, there's no more spoilers though. They were then asked about in-game chat and if this was ever going to be possible so that PC and console people could talk within the game without having to use something like Discord. And they said that's on the table for discussion right now and is currently being discussed every day. But it wouldn't be at launch. They made that very clear that even though it's on the table for discussion right now, that would not be at launch. The same applied for leaderboards. They said that's on the table for discussion frequently. But if they did implement leaderboards in the game, they would want to make sure that the game is completely cheat free. Otherwise the leaderboards wouldn't mean anything. So they want to make sure they've dealt with all the cheating instances first.
You okay?
They were asked if there's going to be any more character creation options. And they said there isn't. There's going to be no more. But your truck can be completely customised. They said unfortunately once you've created your character, you're not going to be able to swap sex.
I thought you were dead.
And they've got no more plans for anything like that for release.
All right.
Unfortunately, there was one question that did get missed at the end, and it was, are there any plans for any new classes? So we're going to put that in the Discord, and hopefully we can get an answer for that. And what I'll do is I'll bob that in my Discord when we get an answer, or on my Twitter. So do make sure you come and join my Discord. The link is in the description down below, or you follow me over on Twitter. Hopefully all this information has been useful and it's filled in some gaps along the way for your Outriders journey with questions that you might have been wondering about. Do come and check me out over on Twitch, twitch.tv/DJTICKLE. Hit that sub button if you like Outriders content. And please do consider giving me a thumbs up for this video. It really would help me out. Thank you for watching everybody, and I'll see you in the next Outriders video. Goodbye.